Hello my friends and welcome to Patch 8 Stress Test Update 3. Hope you're all doing well. So I haven't previously done patch note reviews for these mini updates to the stress test, but this one includes a bunch of stuff that's really exciting to me, including possibly some fixes to make Drunken Master Monk playable, which was my major wish list going into these updates before patch 8 actually launches. It also includes a bunch of changes that I know were some of the major blockers that were preventing patch 8 from actually being fully launched, so I suspect that we're getting very close to the final release of patch 8. So we're going to go over these notes, look at what has changed in this update and all the things that I'm excited about, and then we will test the major balance changes and updates and see if they are actually bringing those subclasses, especially Drunken Master, but a couple others have received major changes, into line with where they should be. So we're just going to go down the list, look at each of these patch notes, and talk about the most important ones. So first up, obviously, fixing crashes is incredibly important, but this is mostly from a technical perspective. I'm just going to skim these and see if there's any that I was running into. Fixed a rare and random crash related to materials and a UI-related crash. I have no idea whether those are ones that I've encountered, but obviously it's good to fix any crashes. Soft lock related to the HUD relating on screen. That one I actually had run into because there's an autosave at the beginning of a bunch of cinematics in honor mode. I had run into this problem a lot during my beta testing, so I'm really glad to see that they've fixed that because that was a new and pretty annoying soft lock that would prevent you from continuing honor mode frequently at the beginning of cinematic cutscenes. A couple fixes for multiplayer, so yeah, mostly just a bunch of fixes, including one that I think is going to be pretty significant because I was running into it a lot, so hopefully that will stop most people from getting the crashes that we were seeing in the beta testing. But of course, what we're really here for is the gameplay and balance changes. Let's take a look at the gameplay notes. So, fixed character's armor sometimes becoming invisible, that's a cosmetic change. Fixed the game freezing when dragging items while trading or bartering. That's very important because that was happening constantly and it's very, very annoying. A multiplayer fix where the host would get a black screen. So I do want to mention that all of these multiplayer fixes I think are really important. The major blocker, as I understand it, for launching patch 8 is that crossplay was having technical difficulties. And that's the main feature of the patch from a technical perspective. So all of these fixes to multiplayer, especially for crossplay related multiplayer, are the main thing that they needed to complete before being able to launch patch 8. So seeing all of these fixes makes me very hopeful that we're going to have it launched in its final version or public version very soon. Fixed an honor mode issue at High Hall where all party members would die when reaching the top of the stem if anyone in the party was being dominated by an enemy. I hadn't personally encountered that, but that is a very important fix because an instant honor mode game over is something you definitely want to avoid. A couple more fixes to just technical things. I'm looking for things that actually change the gameplay. Of course, these are all important fixes, but these are mostly bug fixes. Fixed body type 1 Dwergar, incorrectly receiving halfling stats instead of dwarf stats. I don't think I had seen that either, but that is very funny. So does that mean that if you picked a specific Dwergar body type, you would get the halfling reroll and everything? Because if there was some way to combine Dwergar and Halfling, you would certainly have the strongest race in the game. That would have been a very interesting bug. That's very funny, and of course good that they fixed it. Fixed Gimblebot getting stuck if his attack triggered a reaction. Hopefully that I'm actually hopeful that they've done more than just this specific fix, because the game handles reactions pretty weirdly, especially reactions to multi-attack effects, and I think that's probably what was going on with Gimblebot here. So a lot of enemies will interrupt you in the middle of multi-hit spells. I'm going to test that with the Oathbreaker Knight and see if we cast Magic Missile on him, if we get all of the Magic Missiles. So that's the first thing that I want to test, is if they've actually successfully fixed the reaction code for various effects. I think this probably isn't the same effect, but it's definitely worth testing if that's actually been fixed. Fixed characters not being able to pick up any items, and Dark Urge voice lines, and difficulty in game settings after a game over. Okay, so a bunch of cool bug fixes, not things that are going to significantly change how you build characters or approach the game, unless they have actually fixed the multi-hit bug. But we will test that one and move on to the next section. A couple fixes to mods as well. Modding, of course, is not their main priority when they're adding a bunch of new stuff to the game themselves, but it is awesome to see modding still getting so much technical support from Larian, especially because they have brought it to consoles and are adding console crossplay, so the full modded experience being available to everyone is really important to me. Really great to see that it's important to them as well, and they're continuing to update that. Crossplay and multiplayer, this is the main section that was preventing them from launching the patch. So again, I'm very happy to see a number of significant updates here. Fixed lagging and freezing, for example, is a major downside, and obviously you don't want to launch with the main feature of the patch in a state where it freezes everyone's games whenever you connect. So that probably is one of the major fixes that they had to do before they could launch. Again, all of these crashes and bug fixes are excellent and major blockers before launch, so really good to see those. But of course, while all of these technical changes are awesome, we're very glad to see that they're happening and everything, what we're really here for are the balance updates. So let's take a look at the subclasses. Fixed the new subclass icons for action resources not showing up in character creation. Obviously, that's a tooltip or a cosmetic change. I'm very hopeful that it's gone alongside some other tooltip updates. I don't see tooltip updates mentioned specifically, but we will check if some of the worst offenders have been adjusted. For example, I want to see if the Crown Paladin's level 7 feature that lets you redirect damage has actually been updated to have the correct description when you're leveling up, or if it still copies the tabletop description exactly. Fixed characters facing the wrong direction when shooting Luminous Arrow, that's another cosmetic change. Updated bound Hexblade weapons to apply Hexblade's Curse if they're equipped in the offhand slot. I didn't know that this wasn't working, but that's actually a pretty significant change if you want to be a dual-wielding Hexblade. For example, if you could have the Bloodlust Dagger as your bound weapon, equip it in your offhand, and equip the Infernal Rapier in your main hand, then you could be making attacks with two weapons that both use your Charisma to attack. And the Bloodlust Dagger obviously gives you a bunch of extra bonuses for being in your offhand. The Infernal Rapier is a great main hand weapon. So the fact that you can now have bound offhand weapons, mostly I think is going to matter for dual wielding builds with the Infernal Rapier, but that is a pretty powerful way to build the character. Also pretty flavorful for Will, of course. So I'm glad to see this fix, and I think that that will be a real build. And definitely one that you can make work. Obviously, Hexblade you can make work with everything, but it's really nice to see that that's getting some more support. Deep Impact now correctly grants an extra attack via Pact of the Blade on Honor mode. This was a bug when they fixed it so that Hexblade wasn't getting 3 attacks when you had Pact of the Blade in Honor mode. They accidentally removed Pact of the Blade's extra attack in Honor mode entirely, so Warlocks could only ever get 1 attack and could never get extra attack. So this is obviously a very important fix, and now Warlocks can properly get extra attack again, including Hexblades, if they select Pact of the Blade. It does mean that you'll still have to take Pact of the Blade in order to get extra attack on your Hexblade, which means Hexblades are kind of just roped into. You're absolutely forced to take Pact of the Blade on a Hexblade that goes to at least to level 5, otherwise you don't get extra attack. I do think that they could maybe adjust that in some way to allow Hexblade Warlocks to take the other pacts, but this fix obviously is very important to make sure that you're still getting extra attack on characters that should have it. Updated Booming Blade to only be usable once per action taken. So this is an interesting change, because previously they had changed Booming Blade to only be usable once per turn. If they've changed it to only once per action, so if the initial attack was not Booming Blade for extra attacks, one of the extra attacks can be Booming Blade. So this means that we can Booming Blade Action Surge or Haste, and then Booming Blade again. Previously, you could only use it once per turn, but if you can cast it twice when Action Surging, obviously that just is a significant buff to Booming Blade from the previous state. Not the original state where you could use it on every single attack, but from the previous state where you could only use it once per turn. And Booming Blade did not need buffs. I don't really know why they made this change, other than maybe it feels more intuitive for players. But if you can Booming Blade twice in a turn with Action Surge or haste actions, that just makes that spell even more ridiculously powerful than it already was. And so melee Eldritch Knights and stuff like that are going to be benefiting a lot from Booming Blade. We're going to have to test and see how that's working exactly. The War Magic and War Priest extra attacks will now disable themselves if the bonus action needed for the extra attack is used before the extra attack. So yeah, this was a bug where you could trigger this condition and then use your bonus action. So you could attack and then use your bonus action after triggering War Magic and then still get the extra attack without spending a bonus action. So that's a good fix. Honestly, I feel like War Priest could just get 3 extra attacks a day without needing to use a bonus action on them at all, and it would be kind of flavorful and a neat little buff to the character, but obviously a good fix for the bugged state where it was. Death Domain Reaper passive will no longer disable itself when Twin Spell is on, but still doesn't stack with it. Okay, yeah, this was annoying. It would turn itself off, and it would turn itself off. Reaper would actually turn itself off even if you reloaded a save. You would just no longer be benefiting from Reaper. So I'm going to check that as well and see if we load a save, Reaper still turns itself off also. Hexblade's Banishing Smite tooltip will no longer be specific to ranged attacks. Great, tooltip updates. The Hexblade's Banishing Smite was showing the ranged version, but of course you get access to both the ranged and melee versions. Fix the animation missing for Swashbuckler's Flick of the Wrist action when used by short or large body type. Okay, so just a animation fix. This was kind of weird because Flick of the Wrist is such a long animation that it would just paralyze your character for like a solid 10 seconds. You would have no idea what was happening. The Song of Defense reactions are now sorted in the correct numerical order in the reactions UI. This was so annoying. So this is the Bladesong Wizards feature where they can spend a spell slot to reduce incoming damage. And it was sorted in a completely random order. It went like 2, 3, 1, 5, 4, 6 or something in terms of the spell slots that you could sort. I pointed this out in a video and I also reported the bug, so I'm going to take personal credit for getting this one fixed. You're welcome, everyone. Bladesong Climax will no longer work if you have the Bladesong Impeded condition. Oh, that's interesting. I had not seen that would work when you were wearing armor. Bladesong Climax and End Bladesong will also no longer be removed from the hotbar when you gain Bladesong Impeded. Instead, they're now disabled and have a clarifying warning message in the tooltip indicating that Bladesong is impeded. Alright, so if you are prevented in some way from climaxing, you can no longer do that. So, you know, for the Baldur's Gate, actually, I shouldn't make that joke on the internet. But anyways, you'll all have to imagine it. But this is a good fix that will mean that if you're wearing armor, then you can't use the class abilities that require you not to wear armor. Clarified that Circle of the Stars Chalice Healing must be used on the turn it gets activated. Yeah, so whenever you cast a healing spell, you get a free extra heal with the Circle of Stars Chalice Healing. So good to see, again, more tooltip updates. Drunken Master, but here's the one that I'm really excited about. Drunken Master's redirect attack will now use Unarmed Strike back at the attacker instead of attacking any other new target. So this, I'm not 100% sure exactly what this means, so we're going to check this. But how a redirect attack previously worked was when an enemy attacked you and missed, they would then go attack a random character. That random character could be one of your allies or could be one of their allies. So sometimes redirect attack would just cause them to hit another one of your allies, and you would gain no value out of it. What I believe this means, just looking at the tooltip here, is that you will now punch them back with an unarmed strike. It also might mean that they will unarmed strike themselves, in which case it's a lot less exciting, but we're going to go test that and see how exactly it works. If this gets you a free off-turn unarmed strike whenever an enemy misses with you, so basically the Vest of Soul Rejuvenation ability, whenever an enemy misses an attack against you, you get to hit them with an unarmed strike. That's a lot of extra attacks, and suddenly gives Drunken Master Monk a much more interesting niche, where you can be a retaliation fighter, causing enemies to miss and then hitting them back. You could even potentially do an unarmed strike build with the duelist prerogative as a one-handed weapon to give yourself a second reaction to get multiple attacks back when enemies miss, which would be a really cool way to, especially with various multi-classing options with Drunken Master Monk. So we're going to check that out and see if Drunken Master Monk now has a niche. I'll also test if it's got, if they have changed any of the other issues with the subclass, and also if Life of the Party is still stackable outside of combat. So a bunch of tests that we want to do with Drunken Master Monk. And finally, updated Bursting Shot to now not cause every enemy in the AoE to display miss when the target is missed. That is just a minor UI update, but was probably pretty annoying. I hadn't encountered that myself, because obviously I don't miss my attacks, but the having all of those show up as missed would be pretty irritating. A ton of fixes to photo mode, which again, just like crossplay, is the other really technical part of this patch, and probably by far the two most labor-intensive pieces of the patch that require, specific programmers with specific expertise in these areas to be working on them. So really good to see that they've got all of these additional fixes in place. That to me says that patch 8 is much, much closer to being actually launched, and we should see it probably early April would be my guess, though again, no inside information or anything there. But great to see all of these fixes. I won't look at the specific ones, but good to see photo mode working better. VFX and animation fixes as well, just a lot of clipping and a bunch of clipping and bouncing animation issues. So again, really good to see these technical fixes being done. As always, anytime they go in and update something, I like to see that they're continuing to clean up these bugs and issues that have been in the game for a while, and just leaving the game in a better state than it was before. Just really awesome to see all of these updates and fixes. To me, not to get too, emotional about it, but it's really nice to see game developers that care about their game working well. And a ton of UI updates. Now, if you have followed this channel for a while, you know that UI and tooltips are one of my personal criticisms of Baldur's Gate. I think that they have done a good job, but there's a lot of issues still with the UI and tooltip, so I'm really excited to see this many UI updates. Let's see if there's anything here that's been really annoying for us as players throughout the history of this game that has been fixed. Just skimming through most of these, fixed a bunch of split screen issues. Again, these are all really important. Fixed a bug causing Cosmic Omen ability check to disappear from the hotbar and spellbook after loading a save. Yeah, so this not only was disappearing, it just wasn't working. You couldn't use Cosmic Omen after you reloaded a save, so that's actually a great bug fix. Causing the icons to appear shifted down. Bunch of split screen games, switching between control schemes. Tooltips for the combat log not appearing on controller, even if you have the tooltips toggled on. That sounds very annoying. I haven't played much with a controller, but obviously being able to see the combat log is super important. Special characters into your password, that's good. Fix the generic icon for some passive features missing from their tooltips in the character sheet. That's great. The missing icons were just visually weird, so really glad to see those. I just paused the recording because I had to sneeze, and I wanted to save you guys from hearing me sneeze directly into the microphone, but I sneezed so hard that I accidentally hit the record button again, so now I just have a 1-second clip of me sneezing directly into the microphone. If anyone wants to set that as their ringtone, I'll sell it to you for $20. Fixed visual issues with the white translucent VFX that appears over portraits in the party line, caused when dragging one character's portrait over another's. So this could get your character stuck in the weird sort of ghost mode when you're dragging characters. That's pretty nice. Hopefully they fixed some of the other bugs, like your portrait just resizing randomly. If they have been in there fixing character portraits, we'll have to see as we play whether that's been fixed as well. Fix the tooltips that appear beside character portraits, not showing up correctly on hover. That's huge. That was so annoying not being able to see the effects of your characters when you were hovering over them, or day-long effects. So that's a massive fix. Really glad to see that one. Tooltip bug when trading. Sliders in gameplay options to auto-scroll continuously. when your controller's held down. Pretty useful for controller players. Fix an issue causing the game to freeze for a second when switching between two characters with the character sheet open. Freedom! This was like a solid 4-second freeze in older saves, and for me, because the save that I use for doing character builds has been saved and reloaded and save edited and whatever so many times, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of saves in that overall save file because I've saved and reloaded while making new character builds. This would be a solid 8 seconds of lag whenever I swapped between characters, so probably didn't affect other people as badly, but for me, this is such a big change, and I'm really glad to see that. Fix a bug on controller preventing you from scrolling through the spells in the replace spell UI. That sounds horrible. Really glad they have fixed that. And this is another major fix. Very often, your boots would just not show up in your character sheet, and you wouldn't be able to equip boots. And if you tried to equip them, they would simply disappear until you exited the game and reloaded. That pair of boots would just vanish forever. So, great fix there. Again, all of these UI and quality of life fixes I'm super happy about. And finally, fix the venture forth text shaking during character creation while the button is held down on controller. Sounds like a lot of these were controller UI bugs. My hope is that there's more that aren't mentioned here. The big controller UI bug that I'm aware of is that abilities sometimes don't show up on the ability wheel. So things like produce flame are often not castable because they just don't show up as possible to cast with the controller. I don't see this being fixed, and that is one of the longest standing and most severe UI bugs. So I am hopeful that they still address that in patch 8. Definitely report that bug, especially if you're playing on console, and try to get it fixed, because that would be great if controller players were able to use Produce Flame and Call Lightning and spells like that effectively. So I think that's probably the major bug that I'm aware of that has not been mentioned in this set of UI changes. Scripting change. This sounds like a very irritating story bug that would definitely ruin new playthroughs if this specific story event happened. So really glad to see that fixed. But of course, the combat changes, which there's only a few of, but they're still pretty significant, are the other thing that we're really here for. This first line could cover an enormous amount of things. Fixed a bug causing damage riders to be added multiple times in honor mode. So I don't know what this means exactly. Does this mean Path of the Giants is no longer double adding rage? Does this mean that Falar Louvre charges are no longer adding Hexblade's Curse and so on? So is Hexblade's Curse no longer going to be added to every single damage instance of any given attack? Can you make a magic missile build with Hexblade's Curse and not just have it add that damage every single time? Those are the two major new ones, but also there are tons of bugs that still exist with this. The Lightning Jabber is still broken and adds the lightning damage and adds Tavern Brawler to the lightning charges. So maybe this makes the Lightning Jabber now usable in honor mode without bug abuse. That would be pretty cool. I'm really excited to see what this means and whether they've actually updated some of the weapons that are sort of the most long-standing abusive cases, like Falar, like the Lightning Jabber, like the Rat Bat, to have much less, many fewer issues. And if so, that would be awesome. Fixed a bug causing the Apostle of Merkel to appear tiny when you reload your game during that combat. I hadn't seen that, but I hope there's a YouTube clip of that somewhere, because that just sounds very, very funny. And fixed Sneak Attack not activating for actions that spawn additional projectiles, like Curving Shot. So that might also mean that Sneak Attack now works properly with arrows of many targets, which it was bugged with as well. So if you can use Sneak Attack on those, then that would be pretty cool. Definitely worth checking as well, because of course that would be pretty important to archery characters. Overall, I'm looking at these changes and these are great. I definitely want to test the Drunken Master thing. I think that's the thing I'm most interested in testing, and the Booming Blade thing, and then looking at all of these tooltips. If Drunken Master Monk has received some fixes, then I'm very happy about that. I will, after we look at it and build the character and test it just a little bit, we will see if I still think that it needs more changes. But I'm very glad to see that they've recognized that Drunken Master wasn't working and needed some changes. I suspect it will still need more, but let's see in just a second. All right, so while we're in the character creator, first we're just going to take a quick look at some of the tooltip updates that they said they did. So let's look at Oath of the Crown and see if that has been updated. And whether that will change things. So I'm just going to add just going to quickly speed through these levels and see if the Oath of the Crown tooltip has been updated. Just picking random stuff to get to level 7 as quickly as we can. Interested? Oh, okay. So this is actually really cool. So Aura of Protection used to be completely bugged with the tooltip in the character creator, and it would not show the bonus that you were actually getting. It would always say +0. It now actually is properly showing that we get a +3 bonus to our saving throws based on our charisma. I wish it would say +3 equal to your charisma, so that you would know where that +3 was actually coming from. But having the correct number here in the Aura of Protection tooltip, that's awesome. That's one of the longest standing and most irritating tooltip bugs in the game. So really excited to see that. Oh, let's check Longstrider after and see if it now shows it's a ritual spell as well. But here we are going to Divine Allegiance. Okay, so this tooltip has not been updated and still shows just the paragraph from tabletop rather than the actual effect of the spell, which causes you to take double your paladin level in damage and heal the ally for that much damage, not just take all of the damage for them, as this tooltip would seem to suggest. Actually, I'm going to check if it still shows that in the reactions menu as well, because that would be very nice. So taking a yeah, okay, so now it has the correct numbers here, and it actually shows the numbers. Before it was showing some math as instead of these actual numbers. So obviously they should update the tooltip in the character creation screen and the level up screen to show this tooltip that actually correctly shows how it works. But at least this tooltip has been updated and no longer just spits out a bunch of variables. Let's take a look at some of these other things. Going to check Longstrider as well, and just see if that has been updated. Sure, we will do a Druid. They get access to Longstrider, and so then when we're leveling up and you're preparing spells, Longstrider does not show that it's a ritual spell still. Yeah, so they still have not fixed these. That's one of my other major gripes with tooltips, is that it doesn't show those. So unfortunately, neither of those have been fixed, but at least some of the ones from the new subclasses have been updated. But of course, there were two major gameplay changes that we wanted to test. The first of these is Booming Blade. So we're going to test if we can use it multiple times in one turn now. So I'm just going to become an Eldritch Knight fighter and get level 3, and then we'll just go ahead and drink a haste potion and see if we can use Booming Blade multiple times. Actually, I guess I'll become level 5. We can test how it works with extra attack as well. So we're going to be an Eldritch Knight. We're going to take Booming Blade. We'll go ahead and just pick some random spells here. Doesn't really matter what we take. And sure, we'll just boost our strength. That's totally fine. And we'll just get to level 5. And then should be able to use extra attack and Booming Blade, or use a haste potion and Booming Blade, and see how many times we can actually cast it. So let's go ahead and enter turn-based mode, and we can Booming Blade. We'll hit Karlach, because why not? So we were able to Booming Blade, and we can use our extra attack here, but that extra attack cannot be a Booming Blade. So what happens if I just use this action? And then what if we drink a haste potion? So we're going to go ahead and, pretty sure I picked up potions of speed here. There we go. Just have too much stuff in the inventory. And so then with this next action, we can Booming Blade a second time. That is a massive change to how Booming Blade works, and an enormous buff to Eldritch Knight, which didn't need it, because Booming Blade by itself was already an enormous buff to Eldritch Knight. So now we can do that even more frequently. Let's end turn. And the other thing that I want to check is just, can we use Booming Blade twice if we just have 2 actions without using the extra attack? So if we go into turn-based mode here, we're going to use Booming Blade. We don't need to do that. And then we can't Booming Blade a second time. So we can't, even though we have extra attack, we can't do Booming Blade, and then a normal attack, but we can do Booming Blade, normal attack, and then Booming Blade again. So some interesting constraints there, but a very significant change to how the spell works, and just makes this already super powerful cantrip even more powerful. To editorialize for a minute, I don't think it needed a buff. Booming Blade was already an enormous amount of free damage for any character that can use it, but this is probably more intuitive to the player, so I understand why they did it, but I feel like there are more important balance changes, like the one we're going to talk about next. So, now we're going to take a look at Drunken Master Monk and all of the changes that were made to that. We'll just, So, I guess if we are building our Drunken Master Monk as a retaliation fighter, we probably are still going to want to be an elixir build, or just a dexterity-based monk. And so, that means just theory crafting here. We're most likely to want to take a 17, 16, and 15 stat split, and then use an elixir, and then we'll use our odd numbers to fix the constitution and dexterity. We'll want the highest armor class possible in order to trigger our retaliation attacks as much as we can possibly can, so this will be the best way to get that. I'm just kind of theory crafting as we go, and we'll see how the feature actually works in a second. One other thing I noticed is that this character still had some life of the party stacks before I respec'd when I first loaded up the save, and those have gone away, so maybe those now actually go away when you respec your character to not be a Drunken Master Monk. We'll test that out in a second. Monk level 3, of course, we are becoming a Way of the Drunken Master Monk. I'm just gonna quickly skim these and see if there are any tooltip changes in the meantime. Nothing here that jumps out at me. Let's go ahead and just buff our stats here. Of course, we would probably take Tavern Brawler for a normal version of this build, but I'm just going to take some more dexterity. Stunning Strike, still very powerful, an extra attack. And we get Redirect Attack at level 6. So when a creature misses you with a melee attack, you can spend 1 key point as a reaction to use Unarmed Strike back at them. So this means our character does the unarmed strike at the opponent. So suddenly we have a retaliation attack. We're basically getting the Battle Master maneuver, riposte, that lets us attack enemies back, but with a monk unarmed strike, which is a pretty powerful strike, and with a much cheaper resource, you get a lot more key points than you get Battle Master maneuver points. So this is suddenly a pretty cool retaliation fighter. We're going to test how it looks in actual combat, but I think this is a great change that gives Drunken Master Monk much more of a real niche than it had before. I feel like it could come earlier. You could just put this class feature at level 3, and I think it would be fine, because as is, we're not really getting much that's exciting until level 6, but that's still pretty good. Life of the party, every time Intoxicating Strike hits, the monk gains life of the party. Yeah, so this has the same tooltip. We'll test if it works exactly the same, and if we can still stack it outside of combat. Just going to quickly finish leveling this character. I might as well just take Tavern Brawler and drink an elixir. It'll just make testing easier, because then our unarmed strikes will hit harder. Keep on leveling. I should have checked the previous feature and see if there were any other changes to it. Drunkard's Luck seems to be the same as well, and then we'll finish leveling up the character. So conveniently, I still had a bunch of the armor class items in this character's inventory from my maximum AC build, so we just boosted our AC a little bit, and then we're going to see if this works outside of combat and how it works in combat as well. So firstly, let's just have Karlach make an attack and hopefully miss, with a 20% chance she probably will. And then don't react, reckless attack, and so then we get redirect attack, spend a key point as a reaction. Oh, that's a cool animation, but we also got a critical miss. Let's try that again and see if we can make that work better. Karlach critically missed. That's a lot of natural ones. All right, so that's pretty cool. So we got 1d8 plus 5 plus 5. Yeah, so the damage there was correct. The damage looked a little low, but that's because Karlach has some damage reduction, and we haven't had this character equip any other increases to our attack damage. But that is a pretty cool effect. Obviously, it's still not as powerful as Open Hand Monk in terms of the damage output, but that is a very neat niche for a character to have, and one you could definitely build around. You could also probably take 4 or 6 levels of Battle Master, 6 levels of Drunken Master Monk, and 6 levels of Battle Master, or 8-4 with Battle Master in order to get Life of the Party on your Drunken Master Monk. Could actually be a pretty cool retaliation attacks build with between Riposte from Battle Master and redirect attack from Drunken Master. Let's also take a look and see if we can still stack Life of the Party outside of combat. If so, then they definitely will need to fix that. I really like all these animations. I feel like they've added a lot of new ones. Yeah, so Life of the Party is still stackable outside combat, so you can still get infinite AC before combat starts. Do we keep the Life of the Party stacks now if I change to a different character still? Let's try that as well and just doing some bug testing here. We do still keep Life of the Party, so you can still have all of your characters spec into Drunken Master Monk, unarmed strike stuff until they have, let's say, 1,000 armor class, and then respec back to whatever characters they were. Enemies then still just won't attack them. So this character still has some abusive use cases if you want to cheese the game by stacking Life of the Party outside of combat. Because then enemies, if you have high enough AC, enemies simply won't attack you, so you won't lose the Life of the Party stacks. But that's pretty cool. But the real feature here is that Drunken Master Monk, I think, is still not an amazing class. I would like to see a couple more changes, but this is definitely a massive step in the right direction. Giving this character an identity where it can hit enemies back and actually having a synergistic use for Life of the Party where your armor class increases, now you're more likely to trigger redirect attack, so you have a real class identity of building up these defensive stats and then turning them into offensive stats, I think is a very good direction to take the character. I still think it's going to need another buff of some kind. Obviously, it's not going to compete with Open Hand Monk, and it shouldn't, because Open Hand Monk is too strong, but I would like to see Life of the Party and your other class features have even a little more synergy, and maybe some of these abilities come at slightly earlier levels, but I love to see that they have taken player feedback, including my own, and have made significant changes to this character, such that it actually has a really cool effect now. Alright, my friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this look at the mini update for patch 8. Hopefully, this update, with all of its fixes to a bunch of the core systems that I think were things that were preventing them from launching, means that patch 8 is just around the corner for its public release. Really looking forward to getting to share some of the builds when the characters are in their more finalized forms and everything. And all of the exploration that we can do as a community once that comes out. As always, of course, if you have enjoyed the video, let me know in the comments below. Definitely let me know if this is the type of thing that you would like to see more of, this type of just sort of more casual testing rather than specific builds that I've already put effort into. Obviously, this is a different format where we just kind of try things out and do some theory crafting rather than a build that I've actually playtested and everything. So let me know if you liked this video or if you prefer the more produced style of just full build guides. And of course, if you have enjoyed the video, then hit the like button and hit that notification button as well. Both of those things help me out a ton with the algorithm and you won't miss my videos. And of course, you can subscribe to my channel for more Baldur's Gate 3 and other strategy game analysis. Cheers, friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.